How Do Apples Grow by Betty Maestro, illustrated by Giulio Maestro. So this book is a nonfiction book, another nonfiction book, and it's going to give us some scientific information about how apples grow. When you bite into a juicy apple, you're eating part of a flower. Fruits come from flowers. In winter, an apple tree is bare. It's hard to imagine it covered with flowers or fruit. But even in the cold and snow, tiny leaf buds and flower buds are waiting to open. Inside each leaf bud are tiny curled up leaves. Inside each flower bud are all the parts of an apple flower. Apple flowers are pink and white and sweet to smell, and each flower is the beginning of an apple. When spring comes, there are more hours of sunlight. The days are longer and warmer, and the leaf buds open. Tiny green leaves appear on each twig, and when the apple tree is covered with leaves, the flower buds begin to open. Up close, you can see bunches of small pink and white flowers at the end of each twig. Each flower can become an apple, but all the right things must happen first. An apple flower has many parts, and each has a special job to do. Here's a picture of apple flower buds, and you can see the sepals, or the outside petals of the flower. Around the outside are sepals. They form a little cup to protect the rest of the flower. As the flower blossoms, the sepals open too. The pretty colored petals and sweet flowery smell bring many insects and birds to the apple trees. These animal helpers are needed for flowers to make fruit. There's a diagram or a picture with labels that shows the flower petals, and that's the sepals opening. And you can see the sepals at the base of the flower. And there's the bee. Remember, we talked about how important bees were to making fruits and vegetables. Inside each flower are the male and female parts that make a new apple grow. The male parts are called stamens. Each flower has many stamens. If you look inside an apple flower, you can see all the stamens sticking up in a circle. At the top of each stamen, pollen is made. Pollen is a yellow powder. Each flower has thousands of pollen grains, and each grain of pollen holds male cells. The female part of the flower is called a pistil. You can see some of the pistil right at the center of the flower. The pistil has tiny tubes with sticky tops. At the bottom of the flower, out of sight, these tiny tubes meet, and the place where the tubes meet is called the ovary. The ovary is part of the pistil that holds the female cells, and the ovary will become the inside core of the apple. And notice, you see how there are 5 pistil stems. That's really important because each of those is going to become another seed. When you cut open the apple, you can see those. An apple can grow when the male cells join with the female cells. Then the flower is fertilized. The male cells from the pollen have to reach the female cells in the ovary. This sounds easy, but it's not. The apple flower can only be fertilized from pollen from a different apple tree. Since apple trees can't move, they can't carry the pollen themselves, and they need helpers for this job. Do you know who the helpers are? Bees are some of the apple tree's best helpers. Bees are attracted to the colorful petals of the flowers. They like the smell of the sweet flower juice of the nectar. Bees fly from tree to tree collecting nectar. They'll use the nectar to make honey. As the bees gather nectar, pollen grains stick to their bodies, and when they land on the flowers of other apple trees, some of this pollen falls off. The grains of pollen land on the sticky tops of the pistil's tubes. The male cells in the pollen grains travel down these tiny tubes, and at the bottom, they reach the ovary. Here, the male cells join with the female cells, and the flower is fertilized. Now the petals fall to the ground. The petals are no longer needed. They've done their job. They attracted the bees, right? The flower has been fertilized, and now an apple will begin to grow. It will grow right at the spot where the flower meets the stem. After the fertilized ovary grows bigger, it forms the apple's core, which will hold the seeds. They will be well protected here. Around the ovary, the rest of the apple is swelling too. This is the white, fleshy part that you can eat. And you can see an inside view. And do you see where the sepals are on the left page, where they used to be? If you look at the bottom of an apple, you can see where the sepals were. Look at the bottom of a ripe apple. You can see bits of dried apple sepals from the flower. And when the apple's cut open, you can see the seeds. Look carefully, and you'll see 5 little compartments or sections. There may be as many as 10 seeds inside your apple. The seeds are the fertilized female cells. Apple seeds can grow into new apple trees. And each place where there was a pistil, you can see that's one of the arms of the star. An apple tree must be fed, the apple tree must feed the growing apples. By using sunlight, water, and air, the leaves make a special kind of sugar, and the sugar feeds the fruit. It takes about 50 leaves to make the sugar for 1 apple. All summer long, the apples grow bigger and riper. When fall arrives, the apples are almost ripe. During the last few weeks, apples can feed themselves. They can make their own sugar now, and the sugar makes the apples sweet. And it has a picture of a couple of different kinds of apples: Red Delicious, Macintosh, Golden Delicious, and Granny Smith. Sunlight helps the leaves and the apples to make food. It also helps to change the skin color of some apples. Different kinds of apples have different skin colors. Some turn red and others turn yellow. Some varieties of apples stay green even when they're ripe. When the apples are ripe, it's time for picking. If no one picks an apple, they will fall to the ground. Animals will come and eat some of them and may carry the apple seeds to other places. Some of these seeds will grow into new apple trees. Some of the apples may not rot on the ground, and after a while they'll become part of the soil. They will help feed the tree. As fall ends, the trees lose their leaves. New buds are already forming. They will be next year's apples. For now, the apple tree's work is over. For you, it's time for the best part. It's apple eating time.